This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Lamed Ches. Of course, the learning for the Chodesh of Tevis as it's answered as a Chosi L'Nishmas for the Rashi Bas Vayir Leib, as well as Chosi L'Nishama Vayir Leib and Yaakov. All the learning should be as Chos for their Nishamas, and as well as special sponsorship for my grandfather whose yard set is tomorrow. Daf Lamed Ches Yudala Tevis. The learning should be as Chos for his Ili Nishama Rav David ben Shmuel. Of course, as well Laura Chelim Chaim Yudameir ben Yakir Chaim ben Chazon Malkim ben Mavin Chaim Yisrael Shem Reitel Sarbas Gneitim Asiyas Chaim Sarbas Chaim Zayas Chaim Vindel Yosef ben Mindel as a president Shavalei Shem Bas Navim Shavikim Shulchan Val David ben Iteriva Daniel ben Chana Rezel Yisrael Chaim ben Yehudes Avram Simon Hashez Michal Tzipira Bas Nathali Huvali Bracha Bas Tabia Musa B'Sayik Sha'ar Chali Yisrael. We pick it up at the bottom of Lamed Zayin and Beis. Just first of all, one apology. I was notified that the podcast was not updated. I think Baruch Hashem that is taken care of. And as well, as always, all these shirim are available everywhere. We thank all our wonderful listeners and the entire Chabura for sticking together as we continue on in Shas. Baruch Hashem, Daf Lamed Ches in Pesachim as we close in on the second parak. Let's pick it up on the bottom. Lamed Zayin Beis Amar Rav Asi Isa Shel Meiser Sheni. We have the dough of Meiser Sheni. A machlekes between Ramir and the Chachamim. A machlekes which touches upon concepts that we'll have in many different bases. The Divir Ramir. Betura menachala, divrei chachamim chayavis b'chala. So we have dough of meiser sheni. Machlekes, is that dough chayiv in chala or not? What's the machlekes? Says Rashi, the bottom Rashi, the Rameir. Damer perik sheni dikdushin. Says Rameir, meiser mamin gavayu. Says Rameir, who owns meiser? God owns meiser. Meiser mamin gavayu, and therefore it's betura menachala. Why? Because chala is arisa yisechem. Your dough, v'lo shel gavoya, not God's dough. So if you have God's dough, says Rameir, you are potter from chala. Isa shel meiser sheni is potter. Say the chacham, absolutely not. You're a chayim and chala. Everyone's wondering what's this doing over here. We continue on Lamed Ches and Aleph, and we figured out right away. Matzah is shel meiser sheni. Now what about matzah? You have a matzah that's made of meiser sheni. Meiser sheni, of course, is the meiser they have to take up and eat in Yerushalayim, or you redeem and you eat it in Yerushalayim. So what about the matzah that was made with meiser sheni produce? L'divi Rameir, according to Rameir, Einam Yotzei Chavas v'Pesach. We understand you can't be Yotzei Chim on Pesach because Rameir holds that meiser is Mammon Gavayahu. It's not yours, it's Hashem's. L'divi Chachamim Yotzei Chavas v'Pesach. So number one, machlekes if you're chayim and chala. Number two, machlekes if you're Yotzei Pesach. Number three, esrik shal meiser sheni. What about an esrik? Divi Rameir. You're not Yotzi on Yantif. With we shouldn't deal with why here to say Yantif before he said Pesach. Okay, says Rameir, you're not Yotzi with an Esrig of Meiser. It's not your Esrig. It's Hashem's Esrig. Three different cases, all centering around the same machlekes Rameir and the Chachamim, whether Meiser is Mamin Gavaya or not. Says the Gemara, Maskiv Lara Papa, 6 lines down. Very good when it came to dough. Very good when it came to challah. It says in the Torah, Mishalachem, it has to be your dough. Esrog, when it comes to Esrog, we all know this one. What does it say? Nami dechsiv lekachtem lochem. Lachem mishalachem yehi. Has to be yours. Ela matzah. Where is the din of matzah that has to be yours? Miksiv matzatzchem. Does it say it's your matzah? No, it doesn't. So why is matzah part of the list? Esrog, I understand. Challah, I understand. But matzah, who cares that it's God's matzah? Who said you have to own your matzah? Amar Rava v'tim Ravim bar Shalmei Asya lechem lechem. We have Gzeir Shava. Ksiv Acha says over here lechem oimi. The pasuk we've been discussing for a long time. The poor man's bread. Ksiv Asam. Just like in that pasuk, the second pasuk that we just quoted, it has to be of your own. The second pasuk is a pasuk in Midbar that's talking about the truma. Avkan mishalachem. So to over here, it has to be mishalachem. So it says the Gemara, you're right. It doesn't say matzah, but Rameir learns it out from Gzeir Shava lechem lechem. So 3 dinim. Rameir says you're not yotzi, it's not yours. The Chachamim say you're yes. Say matzah, challah, and esrik. Says Gemara. Let's bring a raya. What's the raya? It says in the brayso that what? Isa shal meiser sheni, betur min achala. The dough of meiser sheni is potter. Divi Rameir chameir mechayeves. Sounds like a beautiful raya. It's such a beautiful raya. Says the Gemara. Leima misayeh. What do you mean leima misayeh? That is exactly what it said. Haynuach. This is the exact case. Says the Gemara. You're right. Hachi kamer. This is what it means. Leima midebligi bi Isa. Should we say that since they argue about the dough, since we see clearly that the dough of challah, this is the din, therefore the same din is over here by the challah, by the matzah, I'm sorry. Meaning, we know that they're arguing about the other cases. Or perhaps shiny also, that's different. So basically the Gemara is concluding that it's not a conclusive proof. Why is that a conclusive proof? Because we don't necessarily know that it applies to all the cases. We see that it's applying to one case, like the Brisa said, but we don't see that it's applying to all the cases. And that concludes the first part of today's daf. Meiser Sheni, Mam and Gavaya, says Rameir, it's Hashem's. Says the Chachamim, nope, it's yours. Says Rameir, therefore you're not Yotzei Matzah, you're not Yotzei Chalv, and you're not Yotzei Esrog. Says the Chacham, all of them work, but by Matzah, where does he learn it out from? Lachem, perhaps we have a Brisa, perhaps we do not. Says the Gemara, we continue, Ba'i Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Ma'u she'yotzi adam v'chayvasai. Now we're upping the ante. Till now we've been discussing Yotzei with Meiser Sheni itself. Now we want to know, what about the Challah of Meiser Sheni? Can you be Yotzei your mitzvah of matzah with that? So you have two things. Number one, it's Meiser Sheni. Number two, it's the Chiyuv of Challah. Challah is the part that you take off. We wrote a whole book on that. Hopefully everyone knows about that. Challah is the part that you take off. So that part that you take off, can you use that as matzah? Says the Gemara. Aliba the Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Now we're going to have a bit of a chazara to things that we've spoken about. According to Rabbi Yisrael Glili, it's not a question. Why is it not a question? Rabbi Yisrael Glili holds that Meiser Sheni, you're not Yotzei in general with chulin, even if it's not challah. Meaning matzah of Meiser Sheni, Rabbi Yosef Glili held, you're not Yotzei. Certainly the challah of Meiser Sheni, you're not Yotzei. Kiti ba'ilcha, what's the question? Aliba, the Rabbi Akiva. Bechulin udenaf. Maybe Rabbi Akiva says, if you have matzah that's created with the Meiser Sheni, we said you are yes Yotzei. What's the reason? As we spoke about a few days ago, Diman tu yesh lahem heter b'maisha voice. Because if the chulin becomes tamei, we said the shita of Rav Eliezer that what you're allowed to eat it b'maishavais, meaning the whole reason to exclude the chiyuv of matzah from Meiser Sheni we learned was why? Because it has to be something that is universal, like eaten in the whole world. True, Meiser Sheni is not; it's only eaten in Yerushalayim. Says the Gemara. Rav Akiva disagrees. Rav Akiva says if it becomes tamei, you can redeem that Meiser Sheni and you could be eaten in the whole world, and that is why Rav Akiva allows you to be yaitzi your mitzvah matzah with Meiser Sheni. Avol Challah, but by Challah, the Imamtilei, the Imitameles la heter b'maishavais. If the Challah becomes tamei, there is no heter. Why? Lisreif azla. You have to burn the Challah which is tamei. Therefore, maybe Rabbi Akiva would agree that what loy nafik, you would not be yotzei. Or yidilmar binan hoyel. Maybe he says the concept of hoyel. What is this concept of hoyel? The ilu loy kara aleh Hashem hoyel. If you would not have said it is challah, the amtu islay heter, and it would become the itmein would have a, if it would become tam, you would have a heter b'maishavais, and therefore the concept v'nafik ba, and you'd be yotzei hashtanami nafik. Says the Gemara, beautiful question. Says the Gemara, what is the story with being yotzei your mitzvah with matzah of challah of Meiser Sheni? Meiser Sheni again is that Meiser in Yerushalayim. Challah is the part that you take off to give to the kohen. Okay, so you have the challah that's taken off of the Meiser Sheni. Now you bake that challah into matzahs. Can you use it on the leil of the seder? Says the Gemara. According to Rabbi Yisrael Glili, there's no question. Of course not. Because Rabbi Yisrael Glili says even Meiser Sheni you cannot use as matzah. Ask the Gemara. What about matzah? What about according to Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva said you can yes be yotzei with Meiser Sheni. Why? Because potentially if it becomes tummy, you can redeem it and eat it outside of Yerushalayim. Ask the Gemara, that was by Meiser Sheni. What about by the challah of Meiser Sheni, where the halacha is that if the challah becomes tummy, you cannot eat it outside of Yerushalayim. So that's one reason to say you cannot be yotzei your mitzvah. Or maybe we have a concept of hoyel. What's the concept of hoyel? That if you would not have made it challah, if it would just have been Meiser Sheni, Rav Akiva would say you're yes yotzei your chiva matzah. So so too, maybe he would say, yes, you're Yaitse, even now that it's Chala, because since you didn't have to make it Chala, therefore Yaitse now, the concept of the Hayil, that is the question of the Gemara. According to Rabbi Akiva, Ika Diamri, says the Gemara a different way of learning this question. That's not the question. Tivadai Amrinan Hayil, says the Gemara, if that's what was bothering you, that's not a question. We for sure say Hayil, we for sure say that you did not have to make a Chal. What's the question? One more step. One more step. You had Meiser Sheni, you bought it to Yerushalayim, and now you have the money of Meiser Sheni, and you took that money and you bought Chala. Va'aliba derabanan again. Now we're one more step to remove. Says the Gemara, according to the Rabbanan Lo Tivai Lecha, it's not a question. Why? Given the Amri Yifte, Hainu Meiser, since the Rabbanan say you can redeem it, therefore what? It's the exact same thing as Meiser. Just like you'd be able to with Meiser, you'd be able to be able with this. Ki Tivai Lecha, leave it to Rabbi Yehuda. What about according to Rabbi Yehuda? What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? As the Gemara now explains, the Amar Yikaver. Says Rabbi Yehuda, you cannot redeem it, you have to bury it. Did not. Now the Mishnah, now the Gemara explains what was that case we were talking about. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry if you were confused. Did not. Halakuach bikesev meiser sheni. Shenitma. What happens if it becomes tummy? That which you bought with meiser sheni. Says the Tanakama, yifta, you can redeem it and you can move on further. So according to that Mandamer, says the Gemara, if you redeem it and you buy challah, which you make into matzah, maybe it could be yaitzik. Rabbi Yehuda, no, you kaver. If it became tummy, it's over. Kol tov, you gotta bury it. So now, what's the question? Me, Amrin on a hayil. Do we say the concept of hayil, which is really a double hayil? Look right now. Vi loy lekuach have. Number one, you didn't have to buy it. Number two, you didn't have to make a challah, 2 stages. And it wouldn't have become Tami Yesh Laheter. Meaning, if you didn't do 2 things, the double theoretical, if you didn't do A, you didn't buy it. You didn't do B, you didn't make a challah, you would have had a heter. See that everywhere. And you be Yoitze, Hashanami Nafik Bay. Maybe we can say a double hayil, or perhaps or maybe we do not say a double hayil. And that would be the question. So the Gemara has 2 different Lashonos, 2 different versions of learning what was bothering the Gemara. What was the question that Rish Lakish asked when he started off in the middle of this Amid, right on the top of your screen over here? What was this question? Was this question a single hayil if you have the challah meiser sheni according to Rabbi Kiva, or was this question a double hayil? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava answers up both shaylas. Mistavra shem meiser chadu. Shema meiser, even though you have to say 1 hayil, you have to say 2 hayils, doesn't make a difference. It has the shema meiser. It's called meiser. It's called something that you could theoretically or double theoretically have in b'shavos in everywhere. That's enough to allow you to be yotzir chiyav matzah, something that theoretically you can everywhere. That's the shame of something you can everywhere. Says Rava to answer up both questions. Let's move on. The bottom of Lameches Amar Aleph, Chalas, Taida, Urikike, Nazir, V'chulu. Says the Gemara, these are items that we said in the Mishnah. These are the ends of the Mishnah. You can be Yotzei, your Chiyav. You cannot be Yotzei your Chiyav with, as the Gemara is going to explain right now, with the Chalas of the carbon Taida or the wafers of the carbon Nazir. Says the Gemara, Minani, immediately where do we know this? Amar Rabba, the Amar Kra. Says Rabba, we learn in the Torah. What do we learn in the Torah? Ushmartem, very, very important daf. Very important concepts. Everyone who knows how do you bake matzah says the Gemara, Ushmartem es matzahs. You gotta watch, shmira, guard those matzahs. Matzahs hamishtaris, l'shem matzah. L'shem mitzvahs matzah. Has to be watched for the shame, for the kedusha, for the lishma, for the intent of matzah. Yatzazu, we exclude these 2 cases of the challah, of the taida, and of the rikik, and of the wafers of the nazir. She'ein mishtameres l'shem matzah, which are not guarded for the sake of a matzah. Therefore says the Gemara, Ella, for what? L'shum zevach. Why did you do them? You made them as a carbon. You did not make them explicitly lishma, l'shem, mitzvahs matzah, as they announced in the bakery all over. And therefore, that is the reason why you're not yotzei with these matzahs. Says Rashi in the top, Rashi, very important Rashi. Kol shimer shatam mishamer shleitach mitzvah vein l'shem mitzvah. You have to have kavana that you're doing a l'shem mitzvah. And the Bir Halacha uses as a raya. We don't say stumble lishma. You have to actually have kavana Rabbanan, this of course is the reason why they announce in all the matzah bakeries, why there are signs everywhere, l'shem, mitzvahs, matzah, as we see that there is a din of lishma on the matzahs in order to buy the Leil Seder. That is the first teretz of the Gemara. Rav Yosef Amar, second teretz Amar Cross says the Torah, Shevas Yamim matzahs toichelu for 7 days. You should eat matzahs. Matzahs and echelis l'shevas Yamim. So it's matzah that's eaten for 7 days. Yotzazu, these matzahs, the matzahs of a Karban Taita, the matzahs of a Nazir, are excluded. Why? They're for 1 day and 1 night. So when you make these matzahs and you have intended how long you can eat it for 1 day and 1 night, therefore it is excluded. It's not the right form of eating it, says Rav Yosef, and that is the reason why you're not Yotzir Mitzvah with the Karban Taita matzah or with the wafer matzah. Says the Gemara, Tanik Vasi de Rabba, Tanik Vasi de Rav Yosef, 2 beautiful rice. Tanik Vasi de Rabba, that what? You would think you're Yotzir with the Taida, Karban Urikiki Nazir, the wafer the Nazir. Tamalaymer says the Torah Shmartem as a matzahs. Matzahs amishteris l'shem mitzvah. Has to be watched for the mitzvah matzah. Yatazu, these items shem shemersi mitzvah l'shom zevach, a clear and beautiful raya to the first sheet of the sheet of Rabbi Toshita of Rabba, says the Gemara. Tani Kavasi now to Rabbi Yosef. That what? Yochel Yosef and the Kavaso Bechalos Taida Rikiki Nazi. You think you're Yosef Tamalai Mahar Shevas Yamim Matzah Teichelu. You got him matzah for 7 days. Matzah Lechaz Shevas Yamim. Yotzazu the Sexudish and Lechaz Shevas Yamim Ella Liyayim Echad. Very good. 2 different Mekayers. Why you're not Yosef with the Karban Taida? You're not Yosef with the matzahs of the Nazir. Why? Because you needed to be Lishma, says Rabba, or because you needed to have the right amount of time. You're eating it for 7 days and not 1 day. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Why don't we learn it out from V'tepik lei milechamayni? We know lechamayni has to be lechamayni, poor man's bread. And what do we learn out from there? That was one way to learn. The other way we learned that was Aini with an Aleph. Says the Gemara, Misha Nechel Ba'aninis, something that's Ein and Aninis when one is an Einin. And we already excluded with this Meiser Sheni and Bikurim. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Yatza Zeshin and Nechel Ba'aninis. The Karban Taita, the Nazir cannot eat it while they're an Einin. Ela B'simcha, they have to be happy. So we should clearly exclude these Karbanis for the fact. That's the Torah calls it lechamayni, that it's like oninas with an aleph. Says Gemara, you know what the carrot is coming? So look, Rabbi Kiva Damer ani ksiv, not oni with the aleph, but rather ani because his no vav, the kriya and the ksiv like we spoke about. Says Gemara, okay, why don't we see that when you make this carbon, when you do for the wafer of the Nazir, they add oil inside. If they add oil inside, we know oil is no good. So why don't we say the reason you can have a Yotzir mitzvah is because there's matzah ashira, there's oil inside? Amar Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, revius he u'mischalekes lekama chalois. There's 1 revius of oil that's spread across so many different chalois. Therefore, that would not be called matzah ashira. Therefore, theoretically, you would be Yotzir. That's why we need 2 different limudim, either for shamartim matzah, says Rabba, or Shivas Yamim Matzah Techelu, says Rav Yosef. Says the Gemara, 3rd question, they don't know why don't you say these karbanos are not eaten everywhere? And we know that matzah sign that yes, it has to be eaten everywhere. On Meishak, you say Meres Chalas Toida Rikiki Nazir, Nachalim and Givon, they are eaten even outside of Yerushalayim, therefore that would not be a reason. Says the Gemara, okay, we tied up our loose ends. So 2 different reasons why the Karban Taita, why the Nazir you cannot be Yotzir mitzvah. Rabba v'shamarta mitzvahs. Rav Yisrael shivas yom techamatzes. Why don't we learn out from Lechamayni? Because we go with Rav Akiva. Why don't we learn it out from that's matzah ashira because it's very small quantity of oil? And why don't we say that it's not eaten everywhere? It says Rish Lakish because it's eaten out of Yerushalayim. Says the Gemara, we conclude for today. Tani, we learned it of Raisa. Omar Avilosh Alti is Rav Eliezer Mahushi Adam Mechalois Toida Rikiki Nazir. Sounds familiar. Rikiki Nazir. Sounds familiar. You allowed to be to these items. Omar Ali responded, Lo Shamati. Basi v'shalti lefnei Rav Yeshua. I didn't hear anything. So go ask Rav Yeshua. Amar li. Hari amru chalo yistei the Rikiki Nazir shasan la'atzmai ein adam yitzibam limgar b'shuk yitzibam, which we saw in Rashi in the Mishnah that if you make these items for yourself, then you're not yotze. If you make them to sell them, then you are yotze. Ukshabasi varitzi dvarim. When I came and I said over these words of Rav Eliezer, Amar li said to me, "Bris, wonderful, and make a." For a covenant, a shvuah that what? Hey, advarim, beautiful. You said perfectly. That's the reason that if you sell it to sold, then you're allowed to. If you sold it made it for yourself, you're not. Shenam relay the Moshe V'Sina. That's the exact reason that Moshe was told in our Sina. Ikadi second lashon says the Gemara, the opposite. Bris, hey, dvarim shenam relay the Moshe V'Sinai. What? You know this? Where did you hear these things? Is this what was said over on Moshe Sinai? V'loy taimabay. What was the reason? Says the Gemara, v'taimamai. What is the reason that it's only something that if you made it to sell, you could yes be if you made it for yourself, you're not yotzei. Amar Rabba. Because when you make something to sell, you always have that mindset in the back of your mind. Amar, you think, if I sell it, wonderful. You say, if I don't sell it, okay, I'll use it for myself. And that will be a lishma, that will be a kavana, that you'll use the matzah for yourself. And that is the reason why when you make it to sell, it will yes work, because at the end of the day, you have some kavana in the back of your brain, but you make it for yourself, then you do not have that kavana, because you made it for the karban. And therefore, says the Gemara, that concludes today's daf, and we will pick it up from daf Lamed Tes tomorrow.